Chapter 2. I rode up over the crest of Culvier and dismounted when I came to my tomb. I went inside and opened the casket. It was empty. Good. I was beginning to wonder. I had half expected to see myself laid out before me, evidence that despite signs and intuitions I had somehow wandered into the wrong shadow. I went back outside and rubbed Star's nose. The sun was shining and the breeze was chill. I had a sudden desire to go to sea. I seated myself on the bench instead and fumbled with my pipe. We had talked. Seated with her legs beneath her on the brown sofa, Dara had smiled and repeated the story of her descent from Benedict and Lintra, the Hellmaid. Growing up in and about the courts of chaos, a grossly non-Euclidean realm where time itself presented strange distribution problems. "The things you had told me when we met were lies," I said. "Why should I believe you now?" She had smiled and regarded her fingernails. "I had to lie to you then," she explained, "to get what I wanted from you." "That being?" "Knowledge of the family, the pattern, the trumps, of Amber. To gain your trust, to have your child." "The truth would not have served as well?" "Hardly. I came from the enemy. My reasons for wanting these things were not the sort of which you would approve." "Your swordplay. You told me then that Benedict had trained you." She smiled again, and her eyes showed dark fires. "I learned from the great Duke Borel himself, a high lord of chaos." "And your appearance," I said. "It was altered on a number of occasions when I saw you walk the pattern. How, and also why?" "All whose origins involve chaos are shapeshifters," she replied. I thought of Dworkin's performance the night he had impersonated me. Benedict nodded. "Dad fooled us with his Ganelon disguise." "Oberon is a son of chaos," Dara said. "A rebel son of a rebel father. But the power is still there." "Then why is it that we cannot do it?" Random asked. She shrugged. "Have you ever tried? Perhaps you can. On the other hand, it may have died out with your generation. I do not know. As to myself, however, I have certain favored shapes to which I revert in times of stress. I grew up where this was the rule, where the other shape was actually sometimes dominant. It is still a reflex with me, and this is what you witnessed that day." "Dara," I said, "why did you want the things that you said you wanted? Knowledge of the family, the pattern, the trumps, Amber, and a son?" "All right," she sighed. "All right. You're by now aware of Bran's plans, the destruction and rebuilding of Amber?" "Yes." "This involved our consent and cooperation." "Including the murder of Martin?" Random asked. "No," she said. "We did not know who he had intended to use as the agent." "Would it have stopped you if you had known?" "You're asking a hypothetical question," she said. "Answer it yourself. I'm glad that Martin is still alive, and that is all I can say about it." "All right," Random said. "What about Brand?" "He was able to contact our leaders by methods he had learned from Dworkin. He had ambitions. He needed knowledge, power. He offered a deal." "What sort of knowledge?" "For one thing, he did not know how to destroy the pattern." "Then you were responsible for what he did," Random said. "If you choose to look at it that way." "I do." She shrugged and looked at me. "Do you want to hear this story?" "Go ahead." I glanced at Random and he nodded. "Brand was given what he wanted," she said, "but he was not trusted. It was feared that once he possessed the power to shape the world as he would not stop with ruling over the revised Amber. He would attempt to extend his dominion over chaos as well. A weakened Amber was what was desired, so that chaos would be stronger than it now is, the striking of a new balance. giving to us more of the Shadowlands that lie between our realms. It was realized long ago that the two kingdoms can never be merged, or one destroyed, without also disrupting all the processes that lie in flux between us. Total stasis or complete chaos would be the result. Yet though it was seen that what Brand had in mind, our leaders had to come to terms with him. It was the best opportunity to present itself in ages. It had to be seized. It was felt that Brand could be dealt with and finally replaced when the time came. "So you were also planning a double cross," Random said. Not if he kept his word, but then we knew that he would not. So we provided for the move against him. How? He would be allowed to accomplish his end and then be destroyed. He would be succeeded by a member of the royal family of Amber who was also of the first family of the courts, one who had been raised among us and trained for the position. Merlin even traces his connection with Amber on both sides, through my forebear Benedict and directly from yourself, the two most favored claimants to your throne. "You are of the royal house of Chaos?" She smiled. I rose, strode away, stared at the ashes on the grate. "I find it somewhat distressing to have been involved in a calculated breeding project," I said at length. "But, be that as it may, and accepting everything you have said as true, for the moment, why are you telling us all these things now?" "Because," she said, "I fear that the lords of my realm would go as far for their vision as Brand would for his. Farther, perhaps. That balance I spoke of. Few seem to appreciate what a delicate thing it is. I have traveled in the Shadowlands near Amber, and I have walked in Amber herself. I have also known the shadows that lay by Chaos's side. I have met many people and seen many things. Then, when I encountered Martin and spoke with him, I began to feel that the changes I had been told would be for the better would not simply result in a revision of Amber, more along the lines of my elders' liking. They would, instead, turn Amber into a mere extension of the courts. Most of the shadows would boil away to join with Chaos. Amber would become an island. Some of my seniors, who still smart at Dworkin's having created Amber in the first place, are really seeking a return to the days before this happened. Total chaos, from which all things arose. I see the present condition as superior, and I wish to preserve it. My desire is that neither side emerge victorious in any conflict." I turned in time to see Benedict shaking his head. "Then you are on neither side," he stated. "I like to think that I am on both." "Martin," I said, "are you in this with her?" He nodded. Random laughed. "The two of you? Against both Amber and the courts of Chaos? What do you hope to achieve? How do you plan to further this notion of balance?" "We are not alone," she said, "and the plan isn't ours." Her fingers dipped into her pocket. Something glittered when she withdrew them. She turned it into the light. It was our father's signet ring that she held. "Where did you get that?" Random asked. "Where else?" Benedict stepped toward her and held out his hand. She gave it to him, and he scrutinized it. "It is his," he said. "It has the little markings on the back that I've seen before. Why do you have it?" "First, to convince you that I am acting properly when I convey his orders," she said. "How is it that you even know him?" I asked. "I met him during his difficulties some time back," she told us. "In fact, you might say that I helped to deliver him from them. This was after I had met Martin, and I was inclined to be more sympathetic toward Amber. But then your father was also a charming and persuasive man. I decided that I could not simply stand by and see him remain a prisoner to my kin." "Do you know how he was captured in the first place?" She shook her head. "I only know that Brand affected his presence in a shadow far enough from Amber that he could be taken there. I believe it involved a fake quest for a non-existent magical tool that might heal the pattern. He realizes now that only the jewel can do it." "You're helping him get away. How did this affect your relations with your own people?" "Not too damned well," she said. I am temporarily without a home." "And you want one here?" She smiled again. "It all depends on how things turn out. If my people have their way, I would as soon go back, or stay with the shadows that remain." I withdrew a trump and glanced at it. "What of Merlin? Where is he now?" "They have him," she said. "I fear he may be their man now. He knows his parentage, but they have had charge of his education for a long while. I do not know whether he could be gotten away." I raised the trump and stared at it. "No good," she said. "It will not function between here and there." I recalled how difficult trump communication had been when I had been to the fringes of that place. I tried anyway. The card grew cold in my hand, and I reached out. There was the faintest flicker of a responding presence. I tried harder. "Merlin, this is Corwin," I said. "Do you hear me?" I seemed to hear a reply. It seemed to be, "I cannot." And then there was nothing. The card lost its coldness. "Did you reach him?" she asked. "I'm not sure," I said, "but I think so. Just for a moment." "Better than I thought," she said. "Either conditions are good or your minds are very similar." "When you began waving Dad's signet around, you spoke of orders." When you began waving Dad's signet around, you spoke of orders," Random said. "What orders? Why is he sending them through you?" "It is a matter of timing." "Timing? Hell! He just left here this morning." "He had to finish one thing before he was ready for another. He had no idea how long it would take, but I was just in touch with him before I came here, though I was hardly prepared for the reception I walked into, and he is now ready to begin the next phase." "Where did you speak with him?" I asked. "Where is he?" "I have no idea where he is. He contacted me." "And?" "He wants Benedict to attack immediately." Gerard finally stirred from the huge armchair in which he had sat listening. He rose to his feet, hooked his thumbs in his belt, and looked down at her. "An order like that would have to come directly from Dad." "It did," she said. He shook his head. "It makes no sense. Why contact you, someone we have small reason to trust, rather than one of us?" "I do not believe that he can reach you at the moment. On the other hand, he was able to reach me." "Why?" "He did not use a trump. He does not have one for me. He used a reverberation effect of the Black Road, similar to the means by which Brand once escaped Corwin." "You know a lot of what's been going on." "I do. I still have sources in the courts, and Brand transported himself there after your struggle. I hear things." "Do you know where our father is right now?" Random asked. "No, I do not know. But I believe that he has journeyed to the real Amber to take counsel with Dworkin and to re-examine the damage to the primal pattern." "To what end?" "I do not know. Probably to decide on the course of action he will take. The fact that he reached me and ordered the attack most likely means that he has decided." "How long ago was this communication?" "Just a few hours, my time. But I was far from here in shadow. I do not know what the time differential is. I'm too new at this." "So it could be something extremely recent, possibly only moments ago," Gerard mused. "Why did he talk with you rather than one of us? I do not believe that he could not reach us if he wished to." "Perhaps to show that he looks upon me with favor," she said. "All of this may be entirely true," Benedict stated, "but I am not moving without a confirmation on that order." "Is Fiona still at the primal pattern?" Random asked. "Last I heard," I told him, "she had set up camp there." "I see what you mean." I shuffled out Phi's card. "It took more than one of us to get through from there, he observed. "True, so give me a hand." He rose and came to my side. Benedict and Gerard also approached. "This is not really necessary, Dara protested. I ignored her and concentrated on the delicate features of my red-haired sister. Moments later, we had contact. "Fiona," I asked, seeing from the background that she was still in the residence at the heart of things. "Is Dad there?" "Yes," she said, smiling tightly. "He is inside with Dworkin." "Listen, urgency prevails. I do not know whether or not you know Dara, but she is here." "I know who she is, but I've never met her." "Well, she claims she has an attack order for Benedict from Dad. She has his signet to back it up, but he did not speak of this earlier. Do you know anything about it?" "No," she said. "All we did was exchange greetings when he and Dworkin were out here earlier to look at the pattern. I had some suspicions then, though, and this confirms them." "Suspicions? What do you mean?" "I think Dad is going to try to repair the pattern. He has the jewel with him, and I overheard some of the things he said to Dworkin. If he makes the attempt, they will be aware of it in the courts of chaos the moment that he begins. They will try to stop him. He would want to strike first to keep them occupied, only—" "What?" "It is going to kill him, Corwin. I know that much about it. Whether he succeeds or fails, he will be destroyed in the process." "I find it hard to believe." "That a king would give up his life for the realm?" "That Dad would." "Then either he has changed or you never really knew him. But I do believe he is going to try it." "Then why send his latest order by someone he knows we do not really trust?" "To show you that he wants you to trust her, I would guess, once he has confirmed it." "It seems a roundabout way of doing things, but I agree that we should not act without that confirmation. Can you get it for us?" "I will try. I will get back to you as soon as I have spoken with him." She broke the contact. I turned toward Dara, who had heard only our side of the conversation. "Do you know what Dad is going to do right now?" I asked her. "Something involving the Black Road," she said. He had indicated that much. What, though, or how, he did not say. I turned away. I squared my cards and encased them. I did not like this turning of events. This entire day had started badly, and things had been going downhill ever since. It was only a little past lunchtime, too. I shook my head. When I had spoken with him, Dworkin had described the results of any attempt to repair the pattern, and they had sounded pretty horrendous to me. Supposing Dad tried it, failed, and got himself killed in the attempt. Where would we be then? Right where we were now, only without a leader, on the eve of battle, and with the succession problem stirring again. That whole ghastly business would be in the back of our minds as we rode to the wars, and we would all begin our private arrangements to fight one another once more as soon as the current enemy was dealt with. There had to be another way of handling things. Better Dad alive and on the throne than a revival of the succession and intrigues. "What are we waiting for?" Dara asked. "Confirmation?" "Yes," I replied. Random began to pace. Benedict seated himself and tested the dressing on his arm. Gerard leaned against the mantelpiece. I stood in thought. An idea came to me just then. I pushed it away immediately, but it returned. I did not like it, but that had nothing to do with practicalities. I would have to move quickly, though, before I had a chance to talk myself around to another viewpoint. No, I would stick with this one, damn it. There came a stirring of contact. I waited. Moments later, I regarded Fiona again. She stood in a familiar place that it took me several seconds to recognize. Dworkin's sitting room. On the other side of the heavy door, at the back of the cave. Dad and Dworkin were both with her. Dad had dropped his Ganelon disguise, and he was his old self once again. I saw that he wore the jewel. "Corwin," Fiona said, "it is true. Dad did send the attack order with Dara, and he expected this call for confirmation. Fiona, bring me through." "What?" "You heard me. Now!" I extended my right hand. She reached forward, and we touched. "Corwin!" Random shouted. "What's happening?" Benedict was on his feet. Gerard was already moving toward me. "You'll hear about it shortly," I said, and I stepped forward. I squeezed her hand before I released it, and I smiled. "Thanks, Fi. Hello, Dad. Hi, Dworkin. How's everything?" I glanced once at the heavy door and saw that it stood open. Then I passed around Fiona and moved toward them. Dad's head was lowered. His eyes narrowed. I knew that look.
"What is this, Corwin? You are here without leave," he said. "I've confirmed that damned order, now I expect it to be carried out."
"It will be," I said, nodding. "I did not come here to argue about that."
"What then?"
I moved nearer, calculating my words as well as the distance. I was glad that he had remained seated. "For a time we rode as comrades," I said. "Damned if I did not come to like you then. I never had before, you know. Never had guts enough to say that before either, but you know it is true. I like to think that that is how things could have been, if we had not been what we are to each other." For the barest moment, his gaze seemed to soften as I positioned myself. Then, "At any rate," I went on, "I'm going to believe in you that way rather than this way, because there is something I would never have done for you otherwise."
"What?" he asked.
"This." I seized the jewel with an upward sweeping motion and snapped the chain up over his head. I pivoted on my heel then and raced across the room and through the door. I drew it shut behind me and snapped it so. I could see no way to bar it from the outside, and so I ran on, retracing the route through the cave from that night I had followed Dworkin along it. Behind me I heard the expected bellow. I followed the twistings. I stumbled only once. Wixer's smell still hung heavy in his lair. I pounded on, and a final turning brought me a view of the daylight ahead. I raced toward it, slipping the jewel's chain over my head as I went. I felt it fall to my breast. I reached down into it with my mind. There were echoes in the cave behind me. Outside! I sprinted toward the pattern, feeling through the jewel, turning it into an extra sense. I was the only person other than Dad or Dworkin fully attuned to it. Dworkin had told me that the pattern's repair might be effected by a person's walking the grand pattern in such a state of attunement, burning out the smear at each crossing, replacing it with stock from the image of the pattern that he bore within him, wiping out the black road in the process. Better me than Dad, then. I still felt that the black road owed something of its final form to the strength of my curse, to the strength my curse against Amber had given it. God damn it, what the fuck? Sorry about that. Come on, man. Read the words. And I lost my place. Great. What a wonderful day. Having fun isn't hard when you got a library card, I tell you what. Alright, hold on. Where the fuck was it? I wanted to wipe that out, too. Dad would do a better job of putting things together after the war than I ever could anyway. I realized at that moment that I no longer wanted the throne. Even if it were available, the prospect of administering to the kingdom down all the dull centuries that might lie before me was overwhelming. Maybe I would be taking the easy way out if I died in this effort. Eric was dead, and I no longer hated him. The other thing that had driven me, the throne, seemed now to have been desirable only because I had thought he had wanted it so. I renounced both. What was left? I had laughed at Vial and then wondered. But she had been right. The old soldier in me was strongest. It was a matter of duty. But not duty alone. There was more. I reached the edge of the pattern, quickly made my way toward its beginning. I glanced back at the cave mouth. Dad, Dworkin, Fiona, none of them had yet emerged. Good. They could never make it in time to stop me. Once I set foot on the pattern, it would be too late for them to do anything but wait and watch. I thought for a fleeting instant of Iago's dissolution. Pushed that thought away, strove to calm my mind to the level necessary for the undertaking, recalled my battle with Brand in this place and his strange departure. Pushed that away too, slowed my breathing, prepared myself. A certain lethargy came upon me. It was time to begin, but I held back for a moment, trying to fix my mind properly on the grand task that lay before me. The pattern swam for a moment in my vision. Now, damn it, now! No more preliminaries. Begin, I told myself. Walk! Still, I stood, contemplating the pattern as if in a dream. I forgot about myself for long moments as I regarded it. The pattern, with its long black smear to be removed. It no longer seemed important that it might kill me. My mind drifted, considering the beauty of the thing. I heard a sound. It would be Dad, Dworkin, Fiona coming. I had to do something before they reached me. I had to walk it, in a moment. I pulled my gaze away from the pattern and glanced back toward the cave mouth. They had emerged, come partway down the slope, and halted. Why? Why had they stopped? What did it matter? I had the time I needed in which to begin. I began to raise my foot, to step forward. I could barely move. I inched my foot ahead with a great effort of will. Taking this first step was proving worse than walking the pattern itself, near to the end. But it did not seem so much an external resistance I fought against as it did the sluggishness of my own body. It was almost as if... Then I had me an image of Benedict inside the pattern in Tirnanoth, Brand approaching, mocking, the jewel burning upon his breast. Before I looked down, I knew what I would see. The red stone was pulsing in time with my heartbeat. Damn them! Either Dad or Dworkin, or both of them, reached through it at this instant, paralyzing me. I did not doubt that either of them could manage it alone. Still, at this distance, it was not worth surrendering without a fight. I continued to push forward with my foot, sliding it slowly ahead toward the edge of the pattern. Once I made it, I did not see how they... Drowsing. I felt myself beginning to fall. I'd been asleep for a moment. It happened again. When I opened my eyes, I could see a portion of the pattern. When I turned my head, I saw my feet. When I looked up, I saw Dad holding the jewel.
Go away,
he said to Dworkin and Fiona, without turning his head toward them. They withdrew as he placed the jewel about his own neck. He leaned forward then and extended his hand. I took it, and he drew me to my feet.
That was a damn fool thing to do, he said.
I almost made it. He nodded.
Of course, you would have gotten yourself killed and not accomplished anything. But it was well done, nevertheless. Come on, let's walk.
He took my arm, and we began to move about the periphery of the pattern. I watched that strange sky sea, horizonless about us, and as we went. I wondered what would have happened had I been able to begin the pattern. What would be happening at that moment?
You have changed, he finally said, or else I never really knew you.
I shrugged. Something of both, perhaps. I was about to say the same of you. Tell me something.
What?
How difficult was it for you, being Ganelon? He chuckled.
Not hard at all. You may well have had a glimpse of the real me.
I liked him, or rather, you being him. I wonder whatever became of the real Ganelon.
Long dead, Corwin. I met him after you had exiled him from Avalon, long ago. He wasn't a bad chap. Wouldn't have trusted him worth a damn. But then I never trust anyone I don't have to.
It runs in the family.
I regretted having to kill him. Not that he gave me much choice. All of this was very long ago, but I remembered him clearly, so he must have impressed me.
And Lorraine?
The country? A good job, I thought. I worked the proper shadow. It grew in strength by my very presence, as any will if one of us stays around for long, as with you in Avalon, and later that other place. And I saw that I had a long while there by exercising my will upon its time stream.
I did not know that could be done.
You grow in strength slowly, beginning with your initiation into the pattern. There are many things you have yet to learn. Yes, I strengthened Lorraine and made it especially vulnerable to the growing force of the Black Road. I saw that it would lie in your path no matter where you went. After your escape, all roads led to Lorraine.
Why?
It was a trap I had set for you, and maybe a test. I wanted to be with you when you met the forces of chaos. I also wanted to travel with you for a time.
A test? What were you testing me for? And why travel with me?
Can you not guess? I have watched all of you over the years. I never named a successor. I purposely left the matter muddled. You were all enough like me for me to know that the moment I declared for one of you, I would be signing his or her death warrant. No. I intentionally left things as they were until the very end. Now, though, I have decided it is to be you.
You communicated this with me, yourself, briefly, and back in Lorraine. You told me then to take the throne. If you had made up your mind at that point, then why did you continue the masquerade?
But I had not decided then. That was merely a means to assure your continuing. I feared that you might come to like that girl too much, and that land. When you emerged a hero of the Black Circle, you might have continued to settle or stay there. I wanted to plant the notions that would cause you to continue your journey.
I was silent for a long while. We had moved a good distance about the pattern. Then, "There is something I have to know," I said. Before I came here, I was speaking with Dara, who was in the process of trying to clear her name with us.
"It is clear," he said. "I have cleared it."
I shook my head. I refrained from accusing her of something I have been thinking about for some time. There is a very good reason why I felt she could not be trusted, despite her protests and your endorsement. 2 reasons, in fact.
I know, Corwin, but she did not kill Benedict's servants to manage her position at his house. I did it myself, to assure her getting to you as she did, at just the appropriate time.
You? You were party to her whole plot? Why?
She will make you a good queen, son. I trust the blood of chaos for strength. It is time for a fresh infusion. You will take the throne already provided with an heir. By the time he is ready for it, Merlin will long have been weaned from his upbringing.
We had come all the way around to the place of the black smear. I stopped. I squatted and studied it. "You think this thing is going to kill you?" I finally asked.
"I know that it is."
"You are not above murdering innocent people to manipulate me. Yet you would sacrifice your life for the kingdom." I looked at him. "My own hands are not clean," I said, "and I certainly do not presume to judge you. A while back, though, when I made ready to try the pattern, I thought how my feelings had changed, toward Eric, toward the throne. You do what you do, I believe, as a duty. I, too, feel a duty now, toward Amber, toward the throne. More than that, actually, much more, I realized, just then. But I realized something else, also. Something that duty does not require of me. I do not know when or how it stopped, and I changed, but I do not want the throne, Dad. I'm sorry it messes up your plans, but I do not want to be king in Amber. I'm sorry." I looked away then, back down at the smear. I heard him sigh. Then,
"I'm going to send you home now. Saddle your horse and take provisions. Ride to a place outside Amber, any place, fairly isolated."
"My tomb?" He snorted and chuckled faintly.
"That will do. Go there and wait my pleasure. I have some thinking to do."
I stood. He reached out and placed his right hand on my shoulder. The jewel was pulsing. He looked into my eyes.
"No man can have everything he wants the way he wants it," he said.
And there was a distancing effect, as of the power of a trump, only working in reverse. I heard voices, then about me I saw the room I had earlier departed. Benedict, Gerard, Random, and Dara were still there. I felt Dad release my shoulder. Then he was gone, and I was among them once again. Excuse me. "What is the story?" Random said. "We saw Dad sending you back. By the way, how did he do that?" "I do not know," I said, "but he confirms what Dara has told us. He gave her the signet and the message." "Why?" Gerard asked. "He wanted us to learn to trust her," I said. Benedict rose to his feet.
"Then I will go and do as I have been bid."
He wants you to attack and then fall back," Dara said. "After that, it will only be necessary to contain them." "For how long?" He said only that this will become apparent." Benedict gave one of his rare smiles and nodded. He managed his card case with his one hand, removed the deck, thumbed out the special trump I had given him for the courts. "Good luck," Random said. "Yes," Gerard agreed. I added my wishes and watched him fade. When his rainbow afterimage had vanished, I looked away and noticed that Dara was crying silently. I did not remark on it. "I too have orders now, of a sort," I said. "I had best be moving." "And I will get back to the sea," said Gerard. "No," I heard Dara say as I was moving toward the door. I halted. "You are to remain here, Gerard, and see to the safety of Amber itself. No attack will come by sea." "But I thought Random was in charge of the local defense." She shook her head. "Random is to join Julian in Arden." "Are you sure?" Random asked. "I'm certain." "Good," he said. "It is nice to know he at least thought of me. Sorry, Gerard, that's the breaks." Gerard simply looked puzzled. "I hope he knows what he is doing," he said. "We've been through that already," I said. "Goodbye." I heard a footfall as I left the room. Dara was beside me. "What now?" I asked her. "I thought I would walk with you wherever you are going." "I'm just going up the hill to get some supplies, and then I'm heading for the stables." "I will go with you." "I'm riding alone." "I could not accompany you anyway, but I still have to speak with your sisters." "They're included, huh?" "Yes." We walked in silence for a time, and then she said, "The whole business was not as so cold-blooded as it seemed, Corwin." We entered the supply room. "What business?" "You know what I mean." "Oh, that. Well, good." "I like you. It could be more than that one day, if you feel anything." My pride handed me a snappy reply, but I bit it back. One learns a few things over the centuries. She had used me, true, but then it seemed she had not been entirely a free agent at the time. The worst that might be said, I suppose, was that Dad wanted me to want her. But I did not let my resentment on this interfere with what my own feelings really were, or could become. So, "I like you too," I said, and I looked at her. She seemed as if she needed to be kissed just then, and so I did. "I'd better get ready now." She smiled and squeezed my arm, and then she was gone. I decided not to examine my feelings just then. I got some things together. I saddled Star and rode back up over the crest of Colvere until I came to my tomb. Seated outside it, I smoked my pipe and watched the clouds. I felt I had had a very full day, and it was still early afternoon. Premonitions played tag in the grottos of my mind, none of which I would have cared to take to lunch. Hold on, let me see how long next chapter is. I think last time I said we were going to do a double chappy, but my throat is killing me. Hold on, let me see how... Oh, dude, we can totally do double chappy. This one isn't crazy long. We got it. Chapter 3. Contact came suddenly as I sat drowsing. I was on my feet in an instant. It was Dad.
"Corwin, I have made my decisions, and the time has come," he said. "Bare your left arm."
I did this as his form continued to grow in substantiality, looking more and more regal all the while, a strange sadness on his face, of a sort I had never seen there before. He took hold of my arm with his left hand and drew his dagger with his right. I watched as he cut my arm and then resheathed his blade. The blood came forth, and he cupped his hand and caught it. He released my arm, covered his left hand with his right, and drew away from me. Raising his hands to his face, he blew his breath into them and drew them quickly apart. A crested red bird the size of a raven, its feathers all the color of my blood, stood on his hand, moved to his wrist, and looked at me. Even its eyes were red, and there was a look of familiarity as it cocked its head and regarded me.
"He is Corwin, the one you must follow," he told the bird. "Remember him."
Then he transferred it to his left shoulder, from whence it continued to stare at me, making no effort to depart.
"You must go now, Corwin," he said. "Quickly. Mount your horse and ride south, passing into shadow as soon as you can. Hell ride. Get as far away from here as possible."
"Where am I going, Father?" I asked him.
"To the courts of chaos. You know the way?"
"In theory. I have never ridden the distance." He nodded slowly.
"Then get moving," he said. "I want you to create as great a time differential as you can between this place and yourself."
"All right," I said, "but I do not understand."
"You will when the time comes."
"But there's an easier way," I protested. "I can get there faster with a lot less bother simply by getting in touch with Benedict with his trump and having him take me through."
"No good," Dad said. "It will be necessary for you to take the longer route, because you will be carrying something which will be conveyed to you along the way."
"Conveyed? How?" He reached up and stroked the bird's feathers.
"By your friend here. He could not fly all the way to the courts. Not in time, that is."
"And what will he bring me?"
"The jewel. I doubt that I'll be able to effect the transfer myself when I have finished what I have to do with it. Its powers may be of some benefit to us in that place."
"I see," I said. But I still need not ride the entire distance. I could trump through after I receive it."
"I fear not. Once I have done what must be done here, the trumps will become inoperative for a short period of time."
"Why?"
"Because the entire fabric of existence will be undergoing an alteration. Move now, damn it! Get on your horse and ride!"
I stood and stared a moment longer. "Father, is there no other way?" He simply shook his head and raised his hand. He began to fade.
"Goodbye."
I turned and mounted. There was more to say, but it was too late. I turned Star toward the trail that would take me southward. While Dad was able to play with the stuff of shadow atop Colvere, I'd never been able to. I required a greater distance from Amber in order to work the shifts. Still, knowing that it could be done, I felt I ought to try. So, working my way southward across bare stone and down rocky passes where the wind howled, I sought to warp the fabric of being about me as I headed toward the trail that led to Garnath. A small clump of blue flowers as I rounded a stony shoulder. I grew excited at this, for they were a modest part of my working. I continued to lay my will upon the world to come beyond each twisting of the way. A shadow from a triangular stone across my path. A shifting of the wind. Some of the smaller ones were indeed working. A backward twist to the trail. A crevice. An ancient bird's nest high on a rocky shelf. More of the blue flowers. Why not? A tree. Another. I felt the power moving within me. I worked more changes. A thought came to me then concerning my newfound strength. It seemed possible that it might have been purely psychological reasons which had barred me from performing such manipulations earlier. Until very recently, I'd consider Amber herself the single immutable reality from which all shadows took their form. Now I realized that she was but first among the shadows, and that the place where my father stood represented the higher reality. Therefore, while the proximity made it difficult, it did not make it impossible to effect changes in this place. Yet, under other circumstances, I would have saved my strength until I had reached a point where it was easier to shift things about. Now, though, the need for haste lay upon me. I would have to exert myself, to rush, to do my father's bidding. By the time I reached the trail leading toward the southern face of Colvir, the character of the land had completely changed. I looked upon a series of gentle slopes. Rather than the steep descent which normally marked the way, I was already entering the Shadowlands. The black road still lay like a scar to my left as I headed downward, but the Garnath through which it had been cut was in slightly better shape than that which I knew so well. Its lines were softer, from flocks of greenery which lay somewhat nearer the dead swath. It was as though my curse upon the land was slightly mitigated. Illusion of feeling, of course, for this was no longer exactly my amber, but I am sorry for my part into this. I addressed everything mentally, half prayer-like. I ride now to try to undo it. Forgive me, O spirit of this place. My eyes moved in the direction of the Grove of the Unicorn, but it was too far to the west, masked by too many trees for me to even glimpse that sacred glade. The slope grew more level as I descended, becoming a series of gentle foothills. I let Star move faster as we crossed them, bearing to the southwest, then finally the south. Lower, lower. At a great distance to my left, the sea sparkled and shone. Soon the black road would come between us, where I was descending into Garnath in its direction. No matter what I did with Shadow, I would not be able to erase that ominous presence. In fact, the fastest course I could follow would be one that paralleled it. We came at last to the floor of the valley. The forest of Arden towered far to my right, sweeping westward, immense and venerable. I rode on, working what changes I could to bear me even farther from my home. While keeping the black road on hand, I stayed a good distance from it. I had to, since it was one thing that I could not change. I kept shrubs, trees, or low hills between us. I reached out then, and the texture of the land changed. Veins of agate, heaps of schist, a darkening of the greenery. Clouds swimming across the sky, the sun shimmering and dancing. We increased our pace. The land sank lower still. Shadows lengthened, merged. The forest retreated. A rocky wall grew to my right, another to my left. A cold wind pursued me down a rough canyon. Strata streaks, red, gold, yellow, and brown, flashed by. The floor of the canyon grew sandy. Dust devils spun about us. I leaned farther forward as the way began to rise once again. The walls slanted inward, grew closer together. The way narrowed and narrowed. I could almost touch either wall. Their tops came together. I rode through a shadowy tunnel. Slowing as it darkened, phosphorescent designs burst into being. The wind made a moaning noise. Out then. The light from the walls was blinding, and giant crystals rose all about us. We plunged past, following an upward trail that led away from this region and through a series of mossy dells where small, perfectly circular pools lay still as green glass. Tall ferns appeared before us, and we made our way among them. I heard a distant trumpeting noise. Turning, pacing. Red now the ferns, wider and lower. Beyond, a great plain, pinking into evening. Forward over pale grasses. The smell of fresh earth. Mountains or dark clouds far ahead. A rush of stars from my left. A quick spray of moisture. A blue moon leaps high into the sky. Flickerings among the dark masses. Memories and a rumbling noise. Storm smell and rushing air. A strong wind. Clouds across the stars. A bright fork spearing a shattered tree to my right, turning it to flame. A tingling sensation. The smell of ozone. Sheets of water upon me. A row of lights to my left. Clattering down a cobbled street, a strange vehicle approaching. Cylindrical, chugging. We avoid one another. A shout pursues me. Through a lighted window, the face of a child. Clattering, splashing. Storefronts and homes. The rain lets up, dies down, and is gone. A fog blows by, lingers, deepens, is pearled by a glowing light to my left. The terrain softens and grows red. The light within the mist brightens. A new wind from behind, a growing warmth. The air breaks apart. Sky of pale lemon. Orange sun rushing toward noon. A shudder. A thing not of my doing, totally unanticipated. The ground moves beneath us, but there is more to it than that. The new sky, the new sun, the rusty desert I have just now entered. All of them expand and contract, fade and return. There comes a cracking sound with each fading I find. And with each fading I find Star and myself alone, amid a white nothingness, characters without a setting. We tread upon nothing. The light comes from everywhere and illuminates only ourselves. A steady cracking noise, as if the spring thaw come upon a Russian river I had once ridden beside, fills my ears. Star, who has paced many shadows, emits a frightened sound. I look all about me. Blurred outlines appear, sharpen and grow clear. My environment is restored, though with a somewhat washed-out look to it. A bit of the pigment has been drained from the world. We wheel to the left, racing for a low hill, mounting it, halting finally at its summit. The Black Road. It too seems denatured, but even more so than the rest. It ripples beneath my gaze, almost seems to undulate as I watch. The cracking noise continues and grows louder. A wind comes out of the north, gentle at first but increasing in force. Looking in that direction, I see a mass of dark clouds building. I know that I must move as I have never moved before. Ultimates of destruction and creation are occurring at the place I visited. When? No matter. The waves move outward from amber, and this, too, may pass away, and me along with it, if Dad cannot pull it all back together again. I shake the reins, and we race southward. A plain, trees, some broken buildings, faster. The smoke of a forest fire, a wall of flame, gone. Yellow sky, blue clouds. An armada of dirigibles crossing. Faster. The sun drops like a piece of hot iron into a bucket of water. Stars become streaks. A pale light upon a straight trail, Sounds Dopplered from dark smears. The wailing. Brighter the light, fainter the prospect. Gray to my right, my left. Brighter now. Nothing but the trail my eyes to ride. The wailing heightens to a shriek. Forms run together. We race through a tunnel of shadow. It begins to revolve. Turning. Only the road is real. The worlds go by. I've released my control of the sets and ride now. The thrust of the power itself. Aimed only to remove me from amber and hurled me toward chaos. There is wind upon me and the cry in my ears. Never before have I pushed my power over shadow to its limit. The tunnel grows as slick and seamless as glass. I feel I am riding down a vortex, a maelstrom, the heart of a tornado. Star and I are drenched with sweat. There is a wild feeling of flight upon me, as though I am pursued. The road has become an abstraction. My eyes sting as I try to blink away the perspiration. I cannot hold this ride much longer. There comes a throbbing at the base of my skull. I draw back gently upon the reins, and Star begins to slow. The walls of my tunnel of light grow grainy, blotches of gray, black, white, rather than a uniformity of shading. Brown, a hint of blue, green. The wailing descends to a hum, a rumble, fading. Gentler the wind, and shapes come and go. Slowing, slowing. There is no path. I ride on mossy earth. The sky is blue, the clouds are white. I am very light-headed. I draw rein, tiny. I was shocked as I lowered my eyes. I stood at the outskirts of a toy village. Houses I could hold in the palm of my hand. Minuscule roads, tiny vehicles crawling along them. I looked back. We had crushed a number of these diminutive residences. I looked all around. There were fewer to the left. I guided Star carefully in that direction, kept moving until we had left that place. I felt bad about it, whatever it was, whoever dwelled there. But there was not a thing that I could do. I moved again, passing through shadow, until I came to what seemed a deserted quarry beneath a greenish sky. I felt heavier here. I dismounted, took a drink of water, and walked around a bit. I breathed deeply of the damp air that engulfed me. I was far from amber now, about as far as one ever need to go, and well on my way to chaos. I had seldom come this far before. While I had chosen this place for a rest stop because it represented the nearest thing to normalcy I could catch hold of, the changes would soon be getting more and more radical. I was stretching my cramped muscles when I heard the shriek, high in the air above me. I looked up and saw the dark form descending. Grey swan deer coming by a reflex into my hand, but the light caught it at a proper angle as it came down, and the winged form took fire on its way. My familiar bird circled and descended to my outstretched arm. Those frightening eyes regarded me with a peculiar intelligence, but I did not spare them the attention I might have on another occasion. Instead, I sheathed Grey Swan Deer and reached for the thing the bird bore, the Jewel of Judgment. I knew by this that Dad's effort, whatever it had amounted to, was finished. The pattern had either been repaired or botched. He was either alive or dead. Choose a couple from either column. The effects of his act would be spreading outward from amber and through shadow now, like the ripples in the proverbial pond. I would learn more of them soon enough. In the meantime, I had my orders. I drew the chain over my head and let the jewel fall upon my breast. I remounted Star. My blood-bird emitted a short cry and rose into the air. We moved again. Over a landscape where the sky whitened as the ground darkened. Then the land flared and the sky grew black. Then the reverse, and again. With each stride the effect shifted, and as we moved faster it built to a stroboscopic series of still shots about us, gradually growing to a jerky animation, then the hyperactive quality of a silent film. Finally, all was a blur. Points of light flashed past, like meteors or comets. I began to feel a throbbing sensation, as of a cosmic heartbeat. Everything began to turn about me, as though I'd been caught up in a whirlwind. Something was going wrong. I seemed to be losing control. Could it be that the effects of Dad's doings had already reached the area of shadow through which I passed? It seemed hardly likely. Still. Star stumbled. I clung tightly as we went down, not wishing to be separated in shadow. I struck my shoulder on a hard surface and lay there for a moment, stunned. When the world came together about me again, I sat up and looked around. A uniform twilight prevailed, but there were no stars. Instead, large rocks of various shapes and sizes drifted and hovered in the air. I got to my feet and looked all about. It was possible, from what I could see of it, that the irregular stony surface on which I stood was itself but a mountain-sized boulder drifting with the others. Star rose and stood shivering at my side. An absolute silence contained us. The air was cool. There was not another living thing in sight. I did not like this place. I would not have halted here of my own volition. I knelt to inspect Star's legs. I wanted to leave as soon as possible, preferably mounted. As I was about this, I heard a soft chuckle which might have come from a human throat. I paused, resting my hand upon Grayswandir's hilt and seeking the source of the sound. Nothing. Nowhere. Yet I had heard it. I turned slowly, looking in every direction. No. Then it came again. Only this time I realized that it had its source overhead. I scanned the floating rocks, shadow-draped. It was difficult to distinguish. There! 10 meters above the ground, and 30 or so to my left, what appeared to be a human form stood atop a small island in the sky, regarding me. I considered it. Excuse me. Whatever it was, it seemed too far off to pose a threat. I was certain that I could be gone before it could reach me. I moved to Mount Star.
"No good, Corwin,"
called the voice I least wanted to hear just then.
"You are locked here. There is no way that you can depart without my leave."
I smiled as I mounted, then drew Grayswandir. "Let's find out," I said. "Come bar my way."
"Very well," he replied,
and flames sprang from the bare rock, towering full circle about me, licking, sprawling, soundless. Star went wild. I slammed Grayswandir back into the scabbard, whipped a corner of my cloak across Star's eyes, and spoke soothing words. As I did this, the circle enlarged, the fires receding toward the edges of the great rock on which we stood.
"Convinced?" came the voice. "This place is too small. Ride in my direction. Your mount will panic again before you can shift into shadow."
"Goodbye, Brand," I said, and I began to ride. I rode in a large counterclockwise circle about the rocky surface, shielding Star's right eye from the flames about the periphery of things. I heard Brand chuckle again, not realizing what I was doing. A pair of large rocks. Good. I rode on by, continuing the course. Now a jagged hedge of stone to my left. A rise, a dip. A massive shadow that the fires cast across my path. There. Down. Up. A touch of green to that patch of light. I could feel the shifting begin. The fact that it was easier for us to take a straight course does not make it the only way. We all pursue it so much of the time, though, that we all tend to forget that we can also make progress by going around in circles. I could feel the shift more strongly as I neared the two large rocks again. Brand caught on about then also.
"Hold it, Corwin!"
I threw up my finger and cut between the rocks, heading down into the narrow canyon speckled with points of yellow light, according to specifications. I drew my cloak away from Star's head and shook the reins. The canyon cut abruptly to the right. We followed it into a better lighted avenue, which widened and brightened as we went. Beneath a jutting overhang, sky of milk shading to pearl on its other side. Riding deeper, faster, farther, a jagged cliff crowned the upper talus to my left, greening and twisted sign of shrubbery beneath a pink-touched sky. I rode until the greenery was bluery beneath a yellow sky, till the canyon rose to meet with a lavender plain where orange rocks rolled as the ground was shaken beneath us in time with our hoofbeats. I crossed there under wheeling comets, coming to the shore of a blood-red sea in a place of heavy perfumes. I rode a large green sun and a small bronze one out of the sky as I paced that shore. while skeletal navies clashed and serpents of the deep circled their orange and blue-sailed vessels. The jewel pulsed upon me, and I drew strength from it. A wild wind came up and lofted us through a copper-clouded sky above a wailing chasm which seemed to extend forever, black-bottomed, spark-shot, fuming with heady scents. At my back, the sound of thunder, ceaseless. Fine lines, like the craquelure of an old painting, abreast of us, advancing everywhere. Cold, a fragrance-killing wind pursues. Lines, the cracks widen, blackness blows to fill. Dark streaks race by, up, down, back upon themselves. The settling of a net, the labors of a giant invisible spider, world-trapping. Down and down and down. The ground again, wrinkled and leathery as a mummy's neck. Soundless our throbbing passage. Softer the thunder, falling the wind. Dad's last gasp? Speed now and away. A narrowing of lines to the fineness of an etching, fading then in the three suns' heat. And faster yet. A rider approaching, hands to hilt in time with my own. Me, myself, coming back? Simultaneous our salutes, then through one another, somehow. The air like a sheet of water that one dry instant. What Carolmere, what Rebma, Tiernoth effect. Yet far, far to my left, a black thing, writhing. We pace the road, and it leads me on. White sky, white ground, and no horizon. Sunless and cloudless the prospect. Only that thread of black, far off, and gleaming pyramids everywhere. Massive, disconcerting. We tire. I do not like this place, but we have to outrun whatever process pursues. Draw rein. I was tired, but I felt a strange vitality within me. It seemed as though it arose from within my breast. The jewel, of course. I made an effort to draw upon its power again. I felt it flow outward through my limbs, barely halting at my extremities. It was almost as if, yes. I reached out and lay my will upon my blank and geometrical surroundings, and they began to alter. It was a movement. The pyramids shuffled by, darkening as they passed. They shrank, they merged, they passed to gravel. The world turned upside down as I stood as on the underside of a cloud, watching landscapes flash by beneath and above. Light streamed upward past me, from a golden sun beneath my feet. This too passed, and the fleecy ground darkened, firing waters upward to erode the passing land. Okay, yeah. It took my brain a second to understand that he was standing on storm clouds and it was raining. Lightnings jumped up to strike the world overhead, to break it apart. In places it shattered and its pieces fell about me. They began to swirl as a wave of darkness passed. When the light came again, bluish this time, it held no point source and described no land. Golden bridges crossed the void in great streamers, one of them flashing beneath us even now. We wind along its course, standing the while still as a statue. For an age, perhaps, this goes on. A phenomenon not unrelated to highway hypnosis enters through my eyes, lulls me dangerously. I do what I can to accelerate our passage. Another age goes by. Finally, far ahead, a dusky, misty blotch, our terminus, growing very slowly despite our velocity. By the time we reach it, it is gigantic, an island in the void, forested over with golden metallic trees. I stopped the motion which has borne us thus far, and we moved forward under our own power, entering that wood. Grass-like aluminum foil crunches beneath us as we pass among those trees. Strange fruit, pale and shiny, hangs about me. There are no animal sounds immediately apparent. Working our way inward, we come to a small clearing through which a quicksilver stream flows. There I dismount.
Brother Corwin,
Comes that voice again.
I have been waiting for you.
Woo! Okay, we're going to end it there. My voice is dying, man. Things are getting interesting now, though. Shadow's flight through Corwin. Corwin's flight through Shadow is my favorite part of Courts of Chaos. Such a great collection of what I really love about walking in Shadow, the Hell Rides. Lots of classical folk and fairy tale stuff happens. Really cool scenery. Just some of my favorite material. I don't know when we get to my favorite chapter. It should be pretty quick to get to. There are two chapters, really. Well, I think it's multiple chapters. My quote unquote favorite chapter actually goes through like multiple chapters. But it should be pretty soon. Chapter 7. Chapter 7 is when it starts. I think also chapter 6 is really good. If it's the one I'm thinking of. It might happen in chapter 5. I can't remember. Chapter 5. Chapter 5 is also a good one. So next time we'll probably read 4 and 5, so we'll get a really good bit happening through there. The end of chapter 5 is like chef's kiss. Such a good line at the end there. Chapter 6 and 7 is great. Chapter 6 is good. Chapter 7 is great. And continuing through like 8 and possibly also 9. It's really good. All the way up through the end, really. Anyways, we'll continue it on next time. Hopefully this will go up before midnight. It probably will. Anyways, thanks for listening, and I'll see you guys next time. Things are getting busier and busier. I didn't get home until much later than usual today, so I didn't really want to record, but, you know, had to do it anyways. I promised I would, so. Anyways, later.